Alright guys, so hopefully this one, it should go a little bit quicker than some of the last ones. I think the other ones are running about 30 minutes long. This one's a little bit, I don't say easier, but you can also use your calculator to help you, so that should save you a little bit of time. There's really not an explanation that I can give you for this one other than just make sure you're using your calculator correctly. As we go through this, it is going to be on square roots and cube roots. So essentially you've got two different ways to work this. I'm just going to, let me find a good blank space down here somewhere. I'm going to start off sort of like with a chart. So we're just going to start off saying 1 squared, 2 squared, 3 squared, 4 squared, 5 squared. We'll just go to there and stop. Okay. Then next to it, we're going to go 1 to the third, 2 to the third, 3 to the third, 4 to the third, and 5 to the third. All right. So if we have 1 squared, what that means is 1 times 1, which is 1. We have 2 squared, 2 times 2, which is 2. 3 times 3, which is 9. Oops. Yeah, I did. I just said 2 times 2 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. There we go. We're going to have 4 times 4, which is 16, and we've got 5 times 5, which gives us 25. All right. So this column right here, this is going to be our perfect squares. And the way that you end up with a perfect square is you take whatever your original number is, you multiply it by itself twice, and that takes you to the number that you're looking for. All right. Also, all the numbers that are in between these, if these are perfect squares, that means all the numbers in between these are going to be non-perfect squares. We had a little bit of that discussion with our rational and irrational. This column would be the rational numbers, and if I come in here and say 2 and 3, those would count as irrational because they're in between the 1 and the 4. I'd have 5, 6, 7, and 8. That's in between the 4 and the 9, so those would be irrational if I tried to take the square root of them. All right. So along with this being our squares and our square roots, we're going to come over here and look at our cubes. So I'm going to start off by saying 1 times 1 times 1. That's pretty easy. We end up with 1. I got 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. So 2 to the third power is 8. Got 3 times 3 times 3. So 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 3 is 27. Got 4 times 4 times 4. 4 times 4 is 16. 16 times 4 is 64. And then our last one that we're going to look at, 5 times 5 is 25. 25 times 5 is 125. All right. So that's going to be sort of like our beginner chart on all these problems that we're going to work. Essentially, everything's going to be to the second power, or it's going to be to the third power. That's your only two options. Now, sometimes they're going to come back and they're going to ask you to take the square root of these numbers. All that means is that you are doing the opposite, 8 and 27, from what we just did. So we're working it backwards. So the square root of 1, the root of that is going to be a 1. The square root of 4, what that means is if I say 2 times 2, I get 4. Square root of 9, if I say 3 times 3, I get 9. Over here, we've got cube roots. So it works in a similar fashion. It's just instead of saying that number times itself twice, we're trying to figure out what number do we say 3 times to get that number under the radical sign. So we're going to say 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. The cube root of 8, 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. Cube root of 27, 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. Right? The other beautiful thing about this is that when you get to the larger numbers especially, you can use your calculator to help you. So whenever you want to take a square root, we're going to say second x squared, and you can actually see the little square root symbol above it. We just type in the number, like 25, and hit enter. It's going to tell us 5. Okay. When you're doing a cube root, it works a little differently. The calculator can do pretty much anything we need it to, but you have to tell it what you want it to do. So we can't use the x squared to find a cube root. We need to look at this blue symbol above the rooftop key that has a little x in front of it. So what that x means is that you're telling the calculator what number you want it to plug in for x. Well, if we're doing the cube root, we're going to plug in a 3. So what I'm going to do is start off by hitting a whole number 3. Then I'm going to do second rooftop, and I'm going to actually type in the numbers that I need, like 125, and hit enter. So that's going to take me to a cube root, which is going to be 5. All right. So just be careful with what it's asking. If it's asking for a square root, you go second x squared. If it's asking for a cube root, you go 3 second rooftop and type in the number. All right. So with all that being said, let's start looking through some of these numbers. So starting off with this one, we're looking for the cube root of this amount on the inside, but we have to figure out what this amount is. So we're going to start off by saying 10 to the second power. So we can do 10 rooftop 2, hit enter. That's going to give us 100. We've got 6 squared, so I can say 6 rooftop 2, hit enter. That gives me 36. And then we can subtract these out. So 100 minus 36 is going to give me 64. Alright. So what I'm doing is now I'm trying to find the cube root of 64. So if you've memorized your chart, you can do it that way. Or if you remember the calculator, we hit 3, second rooftop, 6, 4, and enter. And if we do that, it should come up with whole number 4. Okay? Alright, so looking at the next one for number 2, we got which of the following is a solution to the equation k squared equals 196. So this is when our inverses start to come into play. If you think back to some of the earlier stuff that you've done in different grades, especially with equations, the opposite or the inverse of add is going to be subtract. The opposite or the inverse of multiply is going to be divide. Well, this has opposites and inverses just like everything else. We're going to say that the opposite of squaring something is taking the square root of it. So if I take the square root of the left, that means I also have to take the square root of the right. Just like if I have a minus 4 and a plus 4, what happens to them? They cancel each other out. So I'm left with my variable and the square root of 196. So in this case, I'm going to hit second x squared, 196. That's going to give me 14. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to circle that k equals 14. Alright? There's also a little bit of a catch with this one. Anytime you're taking the square root of a number, you actually have two answers. And the reason why is because I can come over here and I can say a positive 14 times a positive 14 is a positive 196. However, you can also say a negative 14 times a negative 14, that still equals a negative or positive 196. So a lot of times when you see these answers written out, what you'll actually see is plus or minus 14. And all that means is that you can do two positive 14s or you can multiply two negative 14s and you still come out with that 196. Alright? So number 3. We got drag each expression on the left to its equivalent value on the right. More than one expression can have the same equivalent value. So we're starting off with our top one. We've got the square root of 16. If you will know it by hand or want to work it by hand, work it out. If not, remember you got your calculator. You can do second x squared 16, hit enter. Tells us our answer is going to be 4, so we drag it across. Alright, on the next one we got the cube root of 8. So again, if you know your chart down here, you should be able to figure it out. If not, use your calculator. I've got 3, second rooftop 8, hit enter, and that's going to give me 2. Alright, right here I've got the square root of 4. So again, you can use your chart or you can just say second x squared 4, hit enter. Takes me to a 2, and for our last one I've got the cube root, so I hit 3, second rooftop, 64, enter, and that takes me to a 4. And remember, all we're saying is that in order to get 64, you're saying 4 times 4 times 4. Right here, because it's a square root, we're just saying 2 times 2. 8 times, I'm sorry. We've got to find the cube root of 8, so 2 times 2 times 2 equals 8. And here we've got 4 times 4 is 16. Alright? Let's look at number 4. We got if x squared equals 64, which statements below could be true? Select all that apply. And this is kind of one of those tricky ones where they're giving you that plus and minus. So we can say what number times itself equals 64, or in your calculator, we can go second x squared 64, hit enter. That gives us an 8. Okay? A lot of students are going to mark 8 and then they're going to move on to the next one. But you have to remember, if it says select all that apply, chances are there's going to be more than one answer. So not only can we say 8 times 8 equals 64, we can also say negative 8 times negative 8 equals 64. So I have to be able to know that I need to circle both of those answers. Alright, what is the solution of x squared equals 81? Again, we're doing the opposite of the square. If you want to work it out, you can. This square root and the 2 are going to cancel each other out, so that leaves us with x equals the square root of 81, and then we can type it in the calculator. You're going to say second x squared 81, enter, and that's going to give you 9. They could also ask you to say plus or minus 9 if they wanted to. Alright, on our next one, I got to use the calculator for this one. We've got 17 squared. I don't know that one off the top of my head. So we're going to do 17 rooftop 2, 289. So there's 289 minus our 15 squared. So 15 rooftop 2 gives us 225. We are going to subtract those out. 289 minus 225 gives us 264, and remember, we are finding the square root of it. So in our calculator, I can go second x squared 264, enter. That's going to give me 16.2. Alright, so in looking at this one, I come up with 16.2. That seems kind of strange, doesn't it? Let's go back and look at this one more time. I don't have my answer key with me, but I'm pretty sure something went wrong. So 17 raised to the second power, 289. I've got 15 raised to the second power, gives me 225. 289 minus 225 is 64. Something went terribly wrong on that one. So now we got to find the square root of 64, which is going to, if you type it in your calculator, you're going to say what number times itself equals 64, and we come up with 8. Alright, so again, if you ever come up with an answer and it doesn't look quite right, or you're unsure of yourself like I just was, just go back and type it in, because chances are you just made some silly mistake, like you copied it down out of the calculator wrong. So that 2 shouldn't have been there, and we come up with 8. Alright, and also we can say that this is really going to be a plus or a minus 8, because again, it is a square root. Alright, we got 2 more to go. Number 7. We got select the box in each row to identify if the solution for x is less than 10, equal to 10, or greater than 10. Alright, so essentially we don't even have to know exactly what the number is. We're not rounding it off or anything. It's going to be straightforward and simple and to the point. So in my calculator, I'm going second x squared 75, hit enter. Come up with 8.6. That's going to be less than 10. We got x squared equals 100. So second x squared 100, hit enter. Comes up to equal 10. We've got a third root on this one, so I'm going to type 3, second rooftop, 150, enter, and that's going to take me to 5.3, so less than 10. Got another cube root, so 3, second rooftop, 100, going to take me to 4.6, which is less than 10. Square, so we got a square root. Second x squared 125, enter. It's going to take me to 11, so greater than 10. And then we've got a third root again, so 3, second rooftop, 1, 1, 2, 3, enter. That's going to take me to equal to 10. Alright, and then finally our last one. What is the solution to x to the third equals 64? So because it's a third root, where you're going to hit the number 3 in the calculator, second rooftop, 64, enter. That's going to take us to a good old 4. Alright. You also notice they put a negative 4. Let's talk about that real quick before we turn this one off. If I say 4 times 4 times 4, that does give me a 64. If I say negative 4 times negative 4 times negative 4, gives me a positive 16, but then a negative 64. Because negative 64 and positive 64 are not the same, it means I've only got one answer instead of 2. So remember, if I say 4 times 4 is 16, a negative 4 times a negative 4 is also a positive 16. So if you have a second power, a fourth power, a sixth power, eighth power, 10 power, basically any even exponents, you're going to have 2 answers. If you have a third power, a fifth power, seventh power, ninth power, 11th power, any odd exponents, you're only going to have 1 answer when you take the root. Alright, so just be careful about the little details. Don't do like me, get into a hurry and type it in or read your calculator wrong and end up with 264 instead of 64. Just make sure you're paying attention to the details, taking your time, and you shouldn't have any issues on these problems. And most importantly, they say you can use your calculator on the state test, so we're going to use our calculator when we can.